I'm Eva Oh, and this is the Teakink podcast. I've been a dominatrix since 2011, and I would like to spill the tea on my life. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining me. Wait, we need to give the people their feet.
Are we both?
Oh, you don't have to. I'll just do it. Oh wow, no, that's too much.
Too much.
Yeah, we haven't even introduced you yet. This is Miss Gold, and you don't deserve to see her feet.
No, they're being hidden up.
And I am Eva Oh, as you probably know since you're listening to the Kink podcast. And Miss Gold is a very, 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 very good friend of mine. And I have an idea of what we will talk about, but we might end up not talking about it.
Yeah.
Also. But Miss Gold is a prolific photographer, and I would say probably one of the most important ones in the modern fetish scene internationally, in my opinion.
Oh, that's really selling me, isn't it? It's because we're really, really, really good friends.
Check out the Instagram. I'm only friends with her because it's good.
Yeah.
But you had a more formal education in art than I'm used to in the fetish photographer realm. Correct?
Yeah, I did go to art school.
Mm-hmm.
So I studied fine art. I started by doing a foundation like everyone usually does, and then I did 3 years BA fine art. And at that point, my medium was more moving image. Well, it did start off with like print and installations and kind of causing chaos. I was very interested in the practicality of things in the outside world and taking something away from that and see if it would still work.
Keep going. Just making sure our gestures don't go.
Oh yeah, I am a gesticulator. Stay nice and still.
Oh, good.
And then kind of moved into moving image, and it's such a cliche thing to say, but I just love seeing life through a lens. It makes it makes everything seem more pertinent and more permanent. And allows you to remember things in a different way, even through looking through it. Like it's like I can reframe that moment in my mind if I've captured it in that way. The things I don't photograph, I don't remember as much. It's like it double downs in my brain.
Okay.
If I've done it through the camera.
What is something very memorable as of late? You can talk about anything on here.
No, I think the last scene, actually been at Club Verboten on last Friday we just went, there was a person wearing like a latex pig mask getting like choked on by a foot, and that was a really pretty moment for me, and very exciting to be able to capture that and get them at that moment to acknowledge me and say yes. That's the most. And then there's another one with some feet in their face, and so mass bodies. I photographed like an orgy recently, and seeing all the limbs and the sweat and the spit and the passion. I can see these little freeze frames in my mind of like a little storyboard of it.
And is there anything you'd like to create at this point in time, or to remember?
I enjoy photographing my own sex life too, so I can remember it. But then if you swing the pendulum to the other side, there's the more editorial kink work, and I've got kind of a lot of ideas around that. I'm interested in creating other people's fantasies, but not in a way that's real, in like a fantastical way, like in a completely fictitious way. I'm really interested in the relationship between the fiction of sex and the sex itself, and creating images that inform your sex life. That perhaps when you're playing with latex with someone, you're thinking about an image like this together, or do you know what I mean? Like,
What is it about the fantasy that's so interesting for you?
I think where the extreme fantasy of it being unattainable, because when something's attainable, it can lose its. Do you know what I mean? It loses its desire. It's like attainability if it's not attainable, there's hope that you're working towards something. The minute you have it, it's, I've got it now.
Aww.
It loses its charm sometimes. Do you understand what I mean by that?
Yes, but I guess a part of me also thinks that I need to keep looking for something that is worth continuing to be charmed by. Maybe I need to look deeper.
That's nice. I like that. Yeah.
Because I don't want to discard things that are necessarily potentially good.
Not humans. I'm not saying let's discard humans, but I sometimes think that the fantasy of something is better than when it happens, because it's the anticipation.
Okay.
It's the edging. It's that they all tie into tease.
Yeah.
So
you're not only a documentarian, but you are someone who experiences quite thoroughly, correct?
Yes, I would say so.
And when you were first starting, how did you first start to document kink?
So that would have been, so I'd always been documenting everything that was around me. And then I met a partner at the time who was already more involved in kink. And they introduced me to, well, they were like, you know, you're dominant. And I went, really? What does that mean? So I never really kind of attributed that label to myself. I never really thought of myself as a fetishist or someone that was into kink. I just liked telling people what to do. I enjoyed only fucking on top. I couldn't come if I was like even underneath, like things like little things that don't necessarily even make you dominant, but there was a lot, you know, if we have the pie chart of one thing, there was a lot, it was a lot heavier on the dom side, and I didn't really know that. So met him, and then kink became part of my life, and the whole I document everything I do around me. That was like, okay, now this is the thing I'm doing. And then I'd always photographed nightlife, so vanilla, God forbid, vanilla nightlife previously, and I was always trying to get people to snog and stuff. Even then, I was like, "Come on,
don't just pose."
So then that naturally led to being like, "Okay, now I work in this sphere. Let's photograph nightlife, and it's a lot more interesting."
How is it different for the people who don't understand?
Well, some people have things in their assholes.
Some people are arseholes.
Some people are arseholes.
I think that's a very good distinction.
Yeah, definitely. But also sensitivity. Like no one's gonna. You have to. The way you conduct yourself in a sex space with a camera is so different to being in a nightclub. Like, well, in a nightclub, you could just be like, "Can I take your photo?" And they're like, "Yeah." Whereas to gain consent from two people who like might be sucking each other's bits or hitting, someone could be hitting someone or whatever, the whole vast array of things you could be doing in a sex club, you have to kind of linger by the scene, not interrupt the scene, and just hope that they can feel your presence in a non-threatening way and catch your eye, and then you just point at the camera, and it's very, very subtle. But then, you feel they have their scene, and then you're there with the camera, and it becomes like a triangle that you suddenly feel part of very quickly.
It's interesting to think of it as a relationship of some sort of relational interaction, isn't it?
It feels like that.
I guess I'm never photographing. I'm always one being photographed.
Yes.
And I just want to give you what you need. And so it's as we talk a little bit about it, it's not like it necessarily gives me something, but I know that it's a product that you want, and I'm happy to give that to you, especially you. And the rest of them, it's more like, I need the content, so we're going to just get it. But it's interesting to hear how you're speaking of it as it's a relationship.
Totally. But it also, if that couple or throuple or lovers or playmates, whoever you want to talk about the relationships between people in front of you, are exhibitionists, and some of it is, it's hot. They find it hotter that there's a camera there, and there's a fuck, and we're fucking, and there were flashes, and whoa, and then there's the after effect of now people online are going to see these images and think I'm hot. So then it
okay.
lives on beyond that moment.
Okay.
So it becomes this whole relationship with the person in the image and the image itself, and then the viewer of the image. And
so we're talking about mostly your documentation of sex parties. What else is there that you're photographing?
So this is slower, I think, as part of my work. So there's obviously that. I think I swing back and forth. When I'm doing more editorial stuff, I'm like, this is where my heart is. Oh my God, I love it. And then when I'm at the sex clubs, I'm like, no, this is where my heart is. I love it. So I obviously really love both. I think when I'm in a kind of a more, an environment that is more purposeful and controlled. So in a, we've shot together in a ways where it's like the Latex Social Club, where we got a group of people together. And you're posing, and it's like, but that is an opportunity for me to use my imagination and think about, it's a different part of my brain, it works. And I enjoy working as many parts of my brain as possible most of the time. Sometimes I like to not think. So I get to, have these ideas, and I can make them happen in front of me, and that's really satisfying. And then sometimes the people in those images may be people that's their fantasy, that they get to get in it. Like the Latex Social Club, I think especially, like there being those many bodies in latex together and having you there was pretty fucking good for everyone. And being together, and then someone from an outside point of view could look at that image and be like, oh my God, that's my fantasy, to be surrounded by that many latex bodies. Wow, that's so hot. And then those images inform their play. So they might be playing with another person and be thinking about that image, or that, it evokes something in them. So when I introduced you and I talked about you being probably one of the most important fetish photographers in our contemporary age, I wasn't joking. But I guess when I speak about that, it's something like instinctively that I realize about the work that you've put out. But the more that you describe, like for example, that latex shoot that we did, and the more I realize that it lives in consciousness and our history and what that can do to propel us forward, I realized the reality of what I was saying. But there's such a relationship that you formed with these people and with the topic, and the way that you bring the topics up and the way that you interact with the people in scenes. How do you feel about the people who document us but who are not within our community? I don't like it too much.
And why? I get confused. I understand that it looks good and you want to see it, but it falls kind of flat, and it makes me feel intruded upon.
I feel exactly the same. I don't think it belongs. It's an age-old question, because I could go and document, say, bodybuilding shows. I'm not a bodybuilder, and no one would be mad at me. But then that's not sensitive. It's not bodies. It's not personal. It's not... People's sexuality is like the most precious and close thing to them, really, isn't it? And people are vulnerable. And when you're taking pictures of naked bodies, it's very easy to use the word exploitation. So I think it comes from that, if that makes sense.
And what about in you talk about the high fantasy things. What about when people take a high fantasy fashion shoot?
I think that feels different. I think because it's a fantasy. So if that is the artist's fantasy and their artistic vision, and that's how they see something, then who am I to say you can't create that? Whereas I think when you're photographing sex and you're in parties or you're documenting sex workers, I think you should have done the graft. You should. I don't really agree. I don't hate anyone that does it, but my preference at a sex party, if I was being photographed, I would prefer to be photographed by someone that ideally is a sex worker, if I'm honest. And then also someone that really understands the nuances of kink. We're such a repressed, maybe not repressed, stigmatized community. And then this person just gets to walk in with no stigma from the outside, takes the photos, and who are they going back and talking to and telling about what they see? Like, I don't like the idea of being sensationalized or stigmatized from this voyeur that's been allowed in our special space, who then gets to go off with these images and show fucking Clive down the pub that someone's getting fucked in the bum and have a laugh about it. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, I don't trust them. I want them to get it. I want them to care and give a fuck, because what we do in these spaces connects us, and it's magic and it's our freedom, and we really give a shit about it, you know? We really care. This is our life, you know?
Yeah. I guess it's just another avenue for people to potentially misunderstand.
Yes,
and
exactly.
We don't really need more of that.
Exactly. Whereas if you're in it, you can represent it in a way that is right, you know, almost. No one's, my opinion on what's right isn't going to be the same as every single person's in the scene. But and I would never want to say that I'm going to do it 100% justice and I'm going to do it right, because that's ridiculous. But like, I'm going to do it from a place of care because I give a shit. And it means I want to represent our community and our great British sexuality, or anywhere else in the world, in a way that shows it honestly and in a good light, with no sensationalism.
Do you think that has shifted in the time that you've been working? Do you see it shifting further? How does it look different?
Yeah, I definitely feel that there are a lot more sex party photographers and more
sex parties.
More sex parties, a lot more sex parties, more sex party photographers, more of, I can't think of the word, it's prevalence? Yeah.
Popularity? What are we talking about?
On the images themselves. So I feel like before I started photographing sex parties, people didn't photograph play as much at sex parties, not as widely, and that has changed. And being able to be like, look, using them for promotion, sex parties, because there was kind of the culture of it being private, you know, no cameras here. A lot of parties had, and I think now it's like they've realised that we can promote our space, like, and these spaces are businesses as well. I think we've seen a shift in that. We've also seen a shift in parties for everyone. I think there's a wider array of parties for different body types, different tastes, different genders. You know, there's a lot of, there feels like there's pretty much something for everyone, you know?
And you didn't see that?
No. But then at the same time, did I not see that because I wasn't as involved? Is it as I dig deeper into an underbelly I find more? Or are there
like
mood
it's
parties?
become more commercialized, and so now we can see them advertised. We used to have small parties, like private things, but now people are charging tickets prices
for the small, like,
and doing a flyer and hiring a photographer.
How do you feel about that?
About the commercialization of our private spaces? I guess it's a constant negotiation for me, because I understand that the more accessible it is in some ways, the more accepted it is, and the less stigma I have to live within, and everyone else who works in the industry and operates this way. But at the same time, it's like there's probably an upper edge to it, you know, and what does that upper edge look like? I'm not sure. You know, here I am, like, doing an Instagram post for some whatever, you know, brand. I mean, I try to make sure that they're not like totally misaligned, but like every time I do that, I always think, is this the right thing to be doing? Like, people are following me because of so many things that I represent, and then now I'm doing this thing, and we think about needing to make money. It's just, I guess, the more we've existed as a subculture for so long outside, or not too adjacent to a capitalist framework, and now it's being accepted, and with that comes our integration in that capitalist framework. And so I just wonder, what am I supposed to be doing with that? I mean, you also like do influencer posts. How do you feel about it? Or is it more like it's a work thing?
Similar to you. I think My relationship with Instagram and the internet feels very different to what it did a couple of years ago. I think I had an account, it got deleted, and then I never really fell back in love. And I don't feel a pressure to post every day. I don't really care that much about having an online persona, but then also at the same time I do, because I do care about being able to connect with people. I care about having a voice. And it has been helpful to do posts because I have kids and rent and all of those things. So I feel like they're necessary evils, these things, but also I would never work with a brand that I was completely misaligned with or I thought was not something that people follow me would be interested in at all.
What's a weird request? Have you had one yet?
Yeah, I was asked to do like donut dicks or something.
Okay, I mean, don't give them free advertising.
No, I don't even know what they're called.
But like
it was
donuts,
it was a dick, some kind of pastry that was in a dick shape.
Yeah,
and I just didn't feel like that was very me.
I mean, if we're cutting it, it starts oozing things,
maybe. But yeah, I think that was like not right. If someone asked me to do like a kettle, unless it was a smeg, I'd do a smeg. I need
kettle. It would work for me.
Teakink, that would make sense.
I know exactly which one that I want. By the way,
kettles, we're in the market for kettles. No, I'm just looking at that kettle over there. It was the first thing that came to my head, but I don't know.
Kettle, but I want a different one.
What do you want?
I'm not going to tell them until they pay me.
We've gone off topic, haven't we?
No. I mean, it's all the topic. But you gave me a great segue with the motherhood drop.
That was
Yeah. So I mean, when did I first spoke about it on the podcast when I was considering to become a parent, because you're edging towards 40 and society tells you it's not biologically possible. It is possible, it's just more difficult. But then you're thinking, okay, my time's up, what am I going to be doing? Should I consider this thing? And I'm alone, which is also not necessarily an impossible thing. And like, do I get a donor? Do I get my slaves to look after them? So I did this episode about all of these questions, but it also made me realize that there's not much dialogue about parenthood and sexuality, at least not in common. You probably have to really seek it out. And I'm wondering, when you were became a parent, how did people start to interact with your sexuality? How did you start to interact with your sexuality? Was it any different? Has it changed? Do you think there's anything that you've realized about it? Or is it independent entirely?
I think I'm a very unique case because I was pregnant so young. So I was pregnant when I was 16 and had my first child at 17. So I hadn't really had any time prior to that. So at 16, you're not really engaging with I don't think you should be engaging with BDSM in the depths of things, like having not things like violence or like communicative violence.
That children are very violent.
Yeah, I guess they are.
I guess the earlier they have an understanding of why and language around it, probably the better.
It's a good thing, I agree.
Yeah.
But in normal society, it would be unusual to be in the depths of BDSM at 16.
It depends on how intense I think your mind is.
Yeah. I wasn't, per se.
Okay.
So this is, I guess, where I'm leading to. At that point in my life, I think I was obviously having sex because I was pregnant, but, my sexuality... I mean, I'd had some threesomes and got people to eat food off me. So...
What food?
Oh, God, that's a whole other story. Have I told you the sweet chili sauce story? This is really...
Out of everything somebody could eat off of you, it's sweet chili sauce?
Well, no, I done cream and chocolate sauce, but we were in a hotel having a Domino's, and I hadn't thought, I was actually 15 at this point, and I didn't think that about how chili on your vagina was going to be bad.
No.
So...
I mean, sugar is bad enough.
Yeah, well, it burned... band. So that was an early, and I was actually having like threesomes and stuff from 15. So I was exploring my sexuality with multiple bodies, which has always been a real favorite of mine from a very, very young age. But I wasn't really I wasn't aware of kink or BDSM or anything like that. But I was a sexual person. And then obviously had a child very young. So me coming into my sexual self aligned with me becoming a mother. I don't, I grew up
at the same time.
I don't really feel like I was that adult at 16. I thought I was at the time. I thought I was the most adult 16-year-old in the world, like, obviously. But looking back, I was a child.
Yeah.
And, you know, I grew up. I grew into a mother. I grew into a sexual being, and they stood alongside each other. So everything was about
natural.
Me finding myself and figuring these things out. And then it wasn't really until I got pregnant again. I can't remember, maybe I was 27. And then I was deep into the kink scene, and I was going to parties heavily pregnant, and people had a lot to say about that. Or
what did they say?
Well, you know, I did the Frida interview. I did that thing, and I spoke about it was actually not people in those spaces. It was people, observers of those spaces, that didn't understand the spaces. There was a lot of like, why are you in this space with an unborn baby in your stomach? They haven't consented. They don't know what I'm even doing in this space. You know, they don't know, you know, but if I did decide to fuck whoever and I use protection, it's not going to harm your baby. But I was in the space because I was actually just working as a photographer and not doing anything.
But even if you wanted
even if I was, like, I feel even bad saying that, because it's like, oh yeah, other people could do it, but I didn't. Like, I don't feel like that. Like, I just so happened when I'm there for work, I'm quite in that brain, and I find it hard to be in a play brain.
I've seen many pregnant people at play parties.
But the outside,
I think that's more of a question of how people think that they have ownership over women's bodies in general.
Yeah, I think so.
As
and they want to police them. And this is men and women. In fact, it was actually, when I looked at this post, it was more other women who thought I was disgusting. And so that really gave me a lot of food for thought on being a parent and, you know, a sexual being. And people being, I think even before I would speak about having a child, before I was pregnant with my youngest, people would find it, I'd get messages on occasion being like, but what about your kid? When do you do it? When I'm like, did all of you watch your mum and dad fucking? Like, is that what you were doing? Like, did your parents say it's time to fuck now? Come and watch. Like, no, they were adults and they went and did these things in private. Like, just because your tastes are outside of this, like, vanilla or whatever you want to call it, sex doesn't mean that suddenly you're going to have an audience or your kids are going to know. You operate your sexuality in a private way, and then actually you having a more stretched concept of what sex is means that you can have better conversations with your kids. Like, you know, I've discussed porn with my 15-year-old, and he asked me what my work is, and he said, do I make porn? Because he knows I take pictures of naked people. And I said, no, it's not porn per se. And then he said, well, why is it not porn? And I said, it's because it's about intention, and explain the difference between kind of art imagery in that sense and porn. And for me, it's about the intention of what you want the viewer to do. And he was like, oh, okay. Like,
he's smart.
Yeah, he's smart, and he got it. And, you know, we've been able to have conversations about STIs very young and consent. And these are things from being someone that is kink aware. I've been able to educate my kids around.
You're more used to having those conversations.
Yeah, around consent.
And understand how necessary they are.
Exactly. And how sex makes up such a big part of our identity, or have a lack of it, or too much of it, or whatever. I don't know. Can you have too much sex?
This is
a big question.
For that question.
Yeah, wrong couch. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I find it quite interesting how the timing kind of made it quite natural, because actually sometimes I have some friends who are, no, we can't do this because we have to, but I never feel that you are a friend like that. I almost forget that you have like people that you need to look after really early in the morning, and you do it, and it's just like, it looks, obviously it's not effortless, but it doesn't seem like something that weighs on you,
No.
like how I see it seem to, and the way that you've taken it in stride and naturally kind of grew up with it, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I love being a mum so much, or I wouldn't have the kids.
Yeah.
But I love being me as well, and I don't think one cancels the other out. And I think there is, it's such a conversation I've had with so many women that are mothers, that you feel that you have to suddenly identify as mother, like I am mother, and that cancels every other part of your personality out, and your desire, because you shouldn't want to be doing that, because you should be at home baking cakes, or whatever stupid narrative it is. Or
I bought kitchen foil the other day.
Done, Eva. You've really changed. I'm so proud.
A baking tray came with this house. But
Oh,
I haven't baked anything. Anyway, but it's the same thing. It's like being pregnant at a party. It's just like people trying to, it's like these societal stories that you end up self-censoring your own lives, which is such a shame.
but there's duality. Like you can be being good at having fun sex,
be a great baker.
Yeah,
please.
And you can be a great baker. You can do. People are very multifaceted, so yeah, you can be a great mum, and you can talk about sex and do sex and be a sex worker and all of those things, and be great at it all.
Yeah.
And not lose yourself.
And be shitty some days and whatever.
Oh yeah, I'm shit at everything some days. It's very rare. It's rare it happens. There is the occasional day. I'm awful at everything.
Yeah, so you talk about liking to feel like you don't have time to think, but also just not doing anything sometimes. And in these moments, are there these moments, like, do they have anything to do with this correlation of feeling like you're great at things or not, or is it just things that you're looking for yourself? How do you find these times to think or not? And do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I like to not think, but that's not I don't mean that in I like to be so busy I don't have a time to think.
Okay.
I quite enjoy being sickeningly busy.
Yeah.
Because sometimes thinking is really hard work.
Okay.
Or especially like I've just gone through a breakup.
Distraction.
I enjoy being
useful.
Distracted and so busy, and also sometimes I get bored easily, so I need to be stimulated as well. So if I can't think, then I can't think about being bored. Like being on the plane for 3 hours yesterday, that was really hard. I was like, what can I like?
Yeah. Even though you were with a friend.
Yeah. She was like sleepy and she had her headphones in, and then it's like I can't have all the conversations I want, and I wanted to move. I couldn't stand that. Honestly, I don't know how I'll ever go to Australia again. That was too much.
Has this always been a constant for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I need stimulation, but I enjoy thinking when I'm walking.
Okay.
So like I like to have music on, but I like to walk somewhere. I think I like thinking outdoors, like by the sea. I don't have to go to the sea to think. But when I feel like peaceful is, I'd say when I'm closer to nature, which is probably a cliche, but that's when I can process my thoughts in a really, it's very important to think about your feelings and your ideas. But with that comes things you don't want to think about sometimes. So I do quite enjoy like not always thinking. But idea-wise, I often find myself before I sleep there when I really think about like creatively, that's when my juices flow. And that's when I get really excited about things. Or being in a gallery, like other people's work inspire me. I went to see the Dede Moriyama show. I actually seen it twice. I saw it in London and then I saw it in Helsinki again. And seeing their different curation even of the same show was really inspiring. But looking at his images of like, well, I'd be like, oh, that tiny little thing, I want to turn it into this. I really enjoy thinking about ideas. That's my favorite thing to think about. Thinking about and talking about. We love talking about ideas and thinking about things together, and questioning each other. That's fun. That's fun thinking. There's good thinking, bad thinking.
Lots of segmenting going on, but constant thinking. Yeah. I guess the trick for me, like we sometimes talk about also, is understanding what part of that seek for stimulation is useful and what part are we just making a bad choice.
Yeah.
But I think only older patterns teach me what that looks like.
Yeah, you really learn as you get older.
One would hope.
No, well, I have. You have.
I do, but I also have a skill of seeing nuance way too much, and so sometimes I'm like, yes, it is like this, but it also isn't.
Yeah,
I make a similar mistake. I'm like, no, okay, that also goes in that
the
box.
First time. Yeah, I definitely think I was a person for a long time that would do things without thinking about consequence. Like, whereas now I'm much better at being like, if you do this, this will happen. So don't do that thing. And that's something that's age has taught me. But I'm really not perfect. I still do things and know the consequence and decide I don't give a shit.
But it's a very conscious process.
It's a conscious, like, yeah, I'm going to do this. Fuck it. I know it's not going to be good.
Such is what life is for. So what is the next thing that you think you would like to think about and to create consequence with?
Because I want a consequenceless art practice. I'm very so I've been going over to Helsinki a lot, and there's a strip club there that's been allowing me to document. So that's very fun. The idea of, I like it because it feels so elsewhere and so untouched by London, which is nice. Having been here for so long, I'm really enjoying being able to think and make somewhere else. And they don't have very many strip clubs there. They've only got 3 in the city. Their rules are different to here. If you give an extra like $50 in all the club not dollars, euros, you can touch. Whereas like we're all non-contact here. And they seem more open. Like the strip clubs here are very much like, no, we don't want you in when we've got clients. Whereas this club seems more open to that potentially. So that's very exciting. I have this idea with you as well, which we're not going to talk about until we do it. I really want to do some more like large scale editorial, like crazy ideas, which I don't like to talk about until they're happening, but I've got them in my brain. But also I'm not in like this crazy rush to do it, you know. I just want to keep making bodies of work. You know, I'm very interested in the sex party stuff. I really enjoy documenting other sex workers and their sessions. I like to tell their stories, and I'm interested in documenting our history, our contemporaries for history, and photographing as much filth as I can.
Do you have some references, like as in when you say documenting us for history, who was the Miss Gold of the past?
I do feel like Derek Bridges did a great job, but it was very portraiture based in kind of the 80s. I love his stuff with TG back in the day, and you know, but a lot of the photographers or artists that I look to maybe are more like I like Boris Mikolov, who is not a kink photographer. He has, well, I'd say some of his work feels quite controversial because you would question consent and exploitation, but the images themselves are so beautiful and so raw and so real. And that's a constant struggle with as a documenter in that time and place. Like, is it correct? Does everyone's history deserve to be told through the gaze of the photographer? Should they be doing this with no consent? Or should they be doing it? Should they be taking images of people that are drunk and then can't consent? I have a lot of arguments and thoughts about it. And they go back and forth
Mm-hmm.
from the sense of an artistic practice. And then there's a guy called Jonas Mekas, and he does this film called, like, I was passing by and occasionally I saw glimpses of beauty or something. You know the one?
Yeah.
And that I found very inspiring because he sees this. It's very mundane, but I enjoy the gaze and what you feel from that, the emotion it evokes, and the thinking it makes you think. So yeah, I wouldn't say.
So there's a lot of like senses of it. It's not just about the look. It's very much about.
It feels like it's nostalgia. It has that kind of magic fuzziness.
It's just a lot of meaning in multiple ways.
Yes, it does. It's layered. Yeah, I think I enjoy people's work. I enjoy like very documentary photography and moving image stuff, and have always. I enjoy sex photography, but there's not really been anyone in the past that has done it exactly how I would say I do or how I want to do it. That's not saying I'm better than them or worse than them. It's
a different lens.
Yeah, it's a different lens. So yeah.
Quite literally.
Yes.
Okay, well, I look forward to seeing
Thank you.
more and more.
Yes.
And being used.
Yes.
As you wish.
I love that.
So thank you very much for chatting with me.
Thanks for having me.
Miss Gold is my friend.
And yours
a very
now.
inspiring human. And you're very lucky to have seen her feet. So thank you for listening, and I'll speak with you next time.